Hey everyone, it's Anna and Tucker, and we hope you're having a great day today. In today's video, I wanted to do a deep dive into a thriller mystery series that I just finished up that I absolutely loved. It's a series that's been around for a little while, but it is fairly popular. It's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I just finished all 3 books plus the novella, and so I wanted to take this opportunity and kind of introduce the series to you if you're unfamiliar with it and give you my thoughts and recommendations on it. I don't know why, but in the last month or so, I've been on a real thriller kick. I've read like 4 of them. Part of my thriller kind of marathon that I was doing was trying to get through this series because I loved it. So this series is actually a trilogy. It's got 3 books. The first book is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. The second book is Good Girl, Bad Blood. The third book is As Good as Dead. And then there's a novella called Killjoy. As I said, I've been on a thriller kick for the last month or so. This just fell into my reading tastes very nicely. The first book in the series is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I picked this book up sometime last year. I can't remember when, maybe last summer or something like that. And it was a fairly quick read for me, and I really enjoyed it. I went out and I picked up the second one shortly after I finished the first one, but then I kind of got in a situation where I couldn't really read for a few months. I had some health issues, and so I didn't touch it for a long time. And then when I decided to start up this booktube channel, I decided, well, I better read the second one because that's one of the books that I have waiting for me to be read. And so I picked it up back in February, the second one, and then I just finished up the third one and the novella this month. So A Good Girl's Guide to Murder follows a plucky teenager named Pip. Pip is a senior in high school, and she has to do a senior capstone project. And so she decides to pick up a cold case that happened locally in her small town. It's a really tragic case, of course. It doesn't involve people that she knew because it happened, I think, 5 or 6 years prior, but it did involve, people that she's close to. Those people were very close to the people that got killed. And so there were always questions surrounding this particular case. It seemed like a case where a boyfriend killed a girlfriend, and then the boyfriend, through all of his guilt, unalived himself. But Pip always felt like there were some questions that didn't seem quite right that she wanted to have answered. And so she starts going and looking at the crime reports. She goes and starts talking to some of the people that were involved at the time, friends of the victims. The victim's name, the girl, is Andy Bell, and she was supposedly murdered by her boyfriend, Sal Singh, who then of course unalived himself. Well, as she's investigating this case, she's kind of reopening old wounds that everybody in the small town wanted to just stay closed. The Singh family was kind of ostracized. There was a younger brother and parents that still live in town, and they kind of have kept to themselves for the last 5 years. And so she goes, and one of the first doors she knocks on is the Singh residence. And at first, the younger brother, Ravi, does not want to speak to her. He's not interested. But eventually he agrees to speak with her, and he starts getting involved in the case. He starts getting involved in researching what happened, and Pip starts interviewing people, and she starts noticing some things are not right with this story. And so she digs and she digs and she digs, and people don't like it when you dig if the real killer wasn't caught the first time. I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler. I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but the way they think the crime went down is not the way it actually went down. The book has fairly short chapters. It's very quick paced, and it kind of flips back and forth between, a traditional narration and notes that Pip is taking along the way, or recordings that she's taking. So some of these, some of the book is like transcripts of interviews that she's done with various people. So like this is an example of a transcript page. And so it works really well to kind of break up the book, and you know, you kind of go on this journey with her, and through this journey she makes a lot of enemies when she does this research, because again, she's opening up old wounds that certain people want closed. She discovers other crimes that were committed in conjunction with the murders, and so everything just kind of gets upended in this little town of Fairview. And by the end, she of course does figure out what really happened, and there is some justice that happens. And throughout the book, Pip and Ravi grow closer and closer together. Now we have the second book, Good Girl, Bad Blood. And something that I forgot to mention about the first book, I'll back up for a second, is that towards the end of the first book, after she kind of makes all her discoveries, Pip then starts a podcast that she calls A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And so in the podcast, she uploads her interviews, and people listen to the podcast, follow her along on her investigation and everything like that. And so by the time you get to the end of the book, she's got some notoriety nationwide as a crime investigator. So the reason this is important for book 2 is that in book 2, she starts off and she's decided, I'm not going to do any more investigating. The last investigation cost me too much. It caused a lot of harm to people I love and my family and friends and me, and it's just not worth it. I'm done. This is in response to people asking, hey, when are you gonna do a season 2? What's your case gonna be? And she's like, I'm not gonna do a season 2. No, I'm done. And so pretty early on in the book, a friend of hers comes to her and says, hey, my brother's missing. He's been missing for a couple of days. The police won't take my family seriously because my brother has kind of decided to disappear on his own in the past. And this is her friend's older brother, so he's kind of in his mid-20s. And she says, no, I don't do this anymore. Nope, I love your brother, but I'm out. You're gonna have to find someone else to do it. And he's like, the police won't listen to me. Please, it's for, my parents are really worried. My mom's really worried. Something is different this time. I'm telling you, it's not the same as it's been before. Something is different. And so she kind of can't say no. This is a childhood best friend that she's had. And so she says, okay, I'm not gonna investigate, but I'm gonna go down to the police station and I'll have a talk with the detective, and hopefully I can convince them to file a missing persons report, and they'll take it from there. So she goes in and she talks to the detective, and this, you know, police department is like your typical small town police department that like is always shown in TV and movies and in books. They kind of like never do anything, and when they do stuff, they bungle it in some major way. Pip's efforts are fruitless here, and she goes and she tells her friend's family, and the mom is just like super distraught, and she feels bad. And so she has this kind of like internal conflict where she's, you know, it's like a push and a pull. She like really wants to, because it's, you know, in the last book she kind of like found a piece of herself that she didn't know existed, and she's sad to let that go. But at the same time, she knows what it cost, and she doesn't want to put her family through that again. But she also really kind of, her spidey senses are tingling, and she's like, yeah, I agree with you. I think something is up. So she agrees to take the case. And so begins season 2 of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So this time she's uploading interviews and her investigation as it's taking place in real time. She didn't really do that in the first book. She did a lot of investigation. She was almost near the end, or maybe even at the end, before she decided to turn her capstone project into a podcast. So she goes and she starts doing research, and she's looking for her friend Connor's older brother, Jamie. And once again, nothing is what it seems when it comes to Jamie's disappearance. And so through her investigation, she uncovers more things, more kind of negative things about people in town who used to be friends and are now enemies based on her last investigation. And then she uncovers kind of an investigation within an investigation. This disappearance ties back to an old murder case, actually a case regarding a serial killer that's quite old. And so those things are drawn together and all wrapped up in this kid's disappearance. And so the book again has short chapters. It is done in an investigative format. Sometimes you get transcripts. Sometimes you get what's supposed to be a file, a digital file of her notes. Sometimes there's emails. And so there's a good mix. There's actually even, I think, a couple of like pictures in here, evidence pictures that are kind of interesting. It's really fast paced. This time around, Ravi is her boyfriend and her investigative partner. I mean, they're in it together. Even though Pip is the main investigator, Ravi's, helping her out quite a bit. There's some carryover from the last book, and there is an unsatisfactory kind of conclusion to one of the cases that carries over from the first book into the second book, and so people get mad and frustrated, and it kind of brings Pip together with somebody who was like her enemy for a little while. They are kind of commiserating on the injustice of some of this stuff. The second book takes place over a period of like 7 days mainly, and so each day something else happens in this disappearance and investigation. And at the end of the second book, Pip is pretty wrecked. I mean, it kind of felt like she couldn't get any more wrecked after the first book, but after the second book, I mean, she's demolished, towards the end, and she's got a lot of trauma built up at this point, and she does not know how to handle it. And so that's kind of where the second book ends. And so the third book, the final one, As Good as Dead, it is also the largest one. It's quite big, quite thick. So in this one, Pip starts out and she is severely traumatized from what she's been through in the first 2 books, and she's not dealing with it well at all. She's got some less than ideal crutches that she's using in order to kind of get through the day because she can't sleep. She's got all these thoughts and she's quite disturbed. She hasn't processed what happened at the end of the last book, but she's trying to tell everybody that everything's okay, it's totally fine. So this time around, after these last 2 books, Pip has made a lot of enemies at this point, a lot of them. And, she wishes she hadn't, but she did, and she starts to think that somebody is stalking her. She sees little clues, little odd things that are kind of left for her to find. And Ravi tells her, you got to go to the police. Well, the police haven't done really anything up until this point, except, at the very end when she's figured everything out, they make the arrests and whatnot. But the police have bungled everything up until this point, and she's really afraid that they're not going to believe her. But he's like, I love you. I want you to be safe. I'm really worried about you. Please go to the police. And so she says, okay, fine. I'm going to go to the police. So she goes to the police, she talks to the detective, and it's the same detective that she kind of deals with throughout the entire trilogy. And this detective is like, hey, I really feel for you. And it seems like you've got a lot of evidence here, but I just don't know if this really amounts to stalking. Are you okay? You seem not okay. I think maybe you need some help. She kind of takes offense to this, and she's like, I knew you weren't going to help me anyways. It's fine. Whatever, I'm fine. And she walks off, and she doesn't really know what to do, and she questions her sanity for a while, and she's like, maybe I am seeing things. And then some more clues come, and then she's like, okay, I'm not imagining things. And so in this book, Pip goes from investigating crimes against other people to investigating a potential crime that's about to happen against her. And once again, she does some digging, and she realizes that the Andy Bell case has links back to what's going on with her right now. All of these things that she has discovered over the course of a year. So we're like in the third book, we're a year after when she originally started looking at the cold case of Andy Bell. And she's realizing there are some other connections that she didn't realize were there. And there's another connection with another serial killer, one that they thought was solved, but might not be. And she discovers that there might be an innocent man in jail with a false confession who shouldn't be there, and the real killer is still out there and active and might be stalking her as his next victim. And a whole lot of craziness ensues. And of course, Pip is not crazy as far as, what she thinks is happening to her. She makes some discoveries and everything kind of ties back together in the end. So I'll give you my thoughts overall on the trilogy before I talk about the novella, because the novella is kind of like its own little thing. It's not really connected to the main trilogy in any sort of way, and I'll get that at the end. Okay, so as I said, I absolutely loved this trilogy. I read the last book fairly quickly. Even though it's a big book, it is an easy read, and so I was kind of wrapped and I really wanted to finish it. The thing I like most about this trilogy is that I wasn't able to really guess too far ahead as far as what the twists and turns might be and who the killer might be. Like typical mystery, there are several red herrings and a few clues to mislead you down a different path, and I might have taken one or two of those, but when I read mysteries and thrillers, I'm usually pretty good at figuring out who the killer is and generally what happened. The thing that was really missing for me until I got to the third book, especially at the beginning of the third book, was how all this was connected other than just involving the same characters. I kind of had a hard time seeing how this worked out to be a trilogy because everything seemed distantly connected, if they were connected at all. I thought maybe it was just, okay, Pip, and she's kind of getting her investigative chops throughout these three books, and it's just about these crimes that take place in this particular small town, and the link is kind of Pip and Robbie and their friends. And on the surface, that seems true. The link is Pip in the sense that she is the one that decided to open up the original cold case and do some real investigating. As I progressed reading in the third book, things started to click for me. Connections that I didn't even realize were there. They'd been there the whole time. They just seemed really minor and like kind of in the background. And so it's not like by the time you get to the third book, when all these connections start being made and you start seeing how all of these cases and these people are actually really tied together, and it does all tie back to the original case. It doesn't feel manufactured, it doesn't feel forced. It's not like, wait a minute, there's a whole lot of new information in the third book that wasn't in the first and second book. So you're making some leaps here as far as starting to tie these mysteries all together in a nice little bow. It's more like there were breadcrumbs along the way that I just didn't see, which is great. Because who wants to read a mystery or book where it's 350 pages and 150 pages in, you're like, yeah, I definitely know what's going to happen. And then as you're reading, you're like, yeah, I was right. No, yep, I was right about that too. Like, it is kind of interesting and stuff to be right, but you read it because you want to be intrigued and you want there to be mystery and you want to be surprised at the twists and turns, right? The author, Holly Jackson, does a really good job of like planting these little things that you don't think are going to be important, and they all start to become very important in the final book where the ties actually start to show up and get made. And even then is a bit of a twisty turn. You're not quite sure. Pip and Ravi find themselves doing some crazy things, because at this point in the third book, they love each other. They want to be together, as 18-year-olds do. It's their first love. But they're they're trauma bonded a little bit based on all these crimes that they are investigating together. And she does continue her podcast series, and it's the final season. The ties start getting made pretty early in the book, and I couldn't tell, on page 150, I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot being revealed here, and I've still got like 300 pages left. What else is going to happen? And I was a little worried. Don't worry. If you choose to read this trilogy and you start to have the same thoughts I did around page 150, 200 in the final book, don't worry. It's not too early for some things to be revealed, because things get a lot crazier. Like, there's still some major stuff that happens towards the end of the book. But if you're looking for something that isn't a complex read, really, the style kind of changes, throughout the books as far as how it's presented to you. And so it helps kind of break up the longer books, especially. And you like a good crime thriller mystery that's got some twists and turns that you're not going to see coming, and the characters are all very believable. You really get to know several of them by the end of the third book, for sure. And the protagonist is very real. She's likable, but she's got some issues that take her down a couple of notches, for sure. But I think that makes for a more real person, right? Because we're not all good. We're not all bad. We're all in the gray area. And Ravi is her boyfriend. He's not like her shining knight necessarily. I mean, she does need rescuing, but she does a lot of it herself. And they really are kind of a partnership towards the end, which is nice to see. I think it's great if you're looking for something that is going to keep your interest, and the pacing is really good. I can't really think of anywhere that is too slow. And that's saying a lot, because the last book is long. But I enjoyed every bit of it, so much that I went out and bought the novella, and I have 2 more Holly Jackson books waiting in the wings for me that I already purchased that I am looking forward to reading as well. Okay, a little bit about the novella Killjoy. This is actually a prequel, so this book takes place prior to the first book, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Although, if you're going to pick up this series, I don't necessarily think you should read this prior to reading this series, because you won't really care about the characters that are in here. There isn't that much character development in here. And in fact, there's hardly any. So even though in the timeline of this trilogy, Killjoy takes place just prior to Pip kicking off her senior year in her senior capstone project, it feels like it's assumed that you know who these characters are. There's a little bit of introduction, but not really. This novella is actually a lot shorter than it looks, even though it is pretty thin to begin with, because the last third of it is previews of other books, including the first book in this series. The novella, I think, is actually about 100 pages. It takes place at one of the kids' houses. It's a murder mystery theme party that Pip gets invited to, and there are 6 or 7 guests. Ravi doesn't show up in this one because Pip and Ravi don't know each other at this point in time, but some of the other characters that are in the later books are present in this one. And so one of her friends is hosting a murder mystery party, and she gets this invitation that says, this is your character, and it's meant to take place on an island called Joy as part of the British Isles. And so everybody shows up, and they're expected to be dressed in their appropriate attire. I think it's 1920s attire or something like that. Everybody's got a part to play. There are no adults. The adults are out of the house, and so it's just a bunch of teenagers doing a murder mystery party. It actually really reminded me of the episode in Saved by the Bell where the crew goes out and they go do a mystery theater kind of thing in a mansion, which, by the way, is one of my favorite episodes. I've always wanted to take part in one of those mystery murder dinner theater type things. I would love to do that someday. So if you have done one of those, let me know. Did you have fun? Is it worth it? Did you like it? Anyways, there's a murder that happens within the context of the game that they're playing, and so it's a way for Pip to kind of show off her investigation skills before she really hones her investigation skills. But the mystery is kind of mid on this one. It's not that great, but it's just a fun little read, and it's a nice way to like kind of cap off reading the trilogy. But you get to see kind of the beginnings of how she starts to get into investigations and stuff like that. And so this dinner party is kind of what makes her start thinking about taking on the Andy Bell case, because she knows that when she starts her senior year, she's going to have to pick a senior capstone project, and she hasn't quite picked it yet. She's not sure what she's going to do. And by the end of this little novella, she decides, well, I had a lot of fun figuring that mystery out. There are some questions that I've always had about that particular murder case. Maybe I'll do that one. And that's kind of where she leaves it. And then, you know, a few weeks later is when A Good Girl's Guide to Murder starts, and we head down the path of the trilogy. I hope you enjoyed hearing about A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. I really hope you think about picking it up if you like crime thriller mysteries. I forgot to mention this series is a YA series, but I think it probably is more trending towards new adult. There's some profanity, you know, kind of sprinkled throughout. There's probably the most of it in the third book. You know, there are some not super duper graphic, but like kind of graphic, you know, crime details that's mentioned. And so trigger warnings, if any of those, you know, really affect you. There are some serious topics that are discussed, but overall, it's a great read for probably mid to late teens, and then anybody who's an adult could definitely enjoy this if you enjoy mystery crime thrillers. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to do a few more on some of the other thrillers that I've been reading recently, so be on the lookout for those. And in the meantime, feel free to check out any of my other videos. And if you like what you see here, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate the support, and I'm having a lot of fun with this. I hope you're having fun watching these. Let me know what you think. Have you read this trilogy? Do you agree with my assessment? Did you hate it? Do you love it? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!